Okay, I think we're good to go. How's it going, everybody? My name is Kyle Lackey. I am a graduate assistant in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. I'll be graduating with my master's degree in higher education in December, and I plan to find an organization or an institution to work with that fosters a system change through meaningful collaboration of private and public partners. Now, speaking of meaningful collaboration, we're here today to highlight members who participate in our new strategic collaborative initiative called the Diversity Alliance Network. The Diversity Alliance consists of over 40 faculty and staff from academic and administrative units who directly or indirectly support diversity and inclusion initiatives in their department. The purpose of the Diversity Alliance is to share resources and information, build collaborations, enhance the flow of communication about programs, initiatives, and other opportunities, and overall just provide a supportive environment for everyone on campus working to move the needle on diversity and inclusion. Now, it was heartening to find out that we have so many allies and change agents on campus moving this work forward all across the institution. And today, we are launching this new interview series in order to build awareness and highlight some of the amazing work that our colleagues in the Diversity Alliance are doing. I am so excited to start this series with our first guest, Dr. Dana Klar. Dr. Dana Klar is an assistant teaching professor at UMSL and a clinician and trained forensic interviewer with Child Advocacy Services of Greater St. Louis. For over 30 years, Dana has worked in child advocacy or academia and was excited to merge these two by joining UMSL's Child Advocacy Studies, also known as CAST, as a faculty in the Psychological Sciences Department as the first full-time CAST faculty hire in 2017. Now, a few highlights that I thought was really interesting is Dana served as the founding director and then later interim and director once again of the Buder Center for American Indian Studies at Washington University, totaling 9 years of service in this role. She didn't stop there either. She also served 9 years in Lindenwood University as a faculty field education coordinator and later programming chair of social work. Her 9 years of more direct service, child advocacy, includes several years of service as a guardian ad litem, which is a child attorney, if you didn't know, because I had no idea. And I may have had to Google that. And the St. Louis Family County Courts, and a few years as a staff attorney for court-appointed special advocacies, also known as Voices for Children. Dr. Klar, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Kyle. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, let's start it off with how are you holding up during COVID-19? It's a really weird time for all of us.
It is, and I mean, I guess to be honest, I'm weary. I'm tired. The days come and go, but lately I've noticed just being a lot more tired. I think the pressure's there now. It's like the unknown, but maybe within about a month we'll know something. So it's just it's the mounting sense of what's going to happen, and that great unknown has gotten just been really, really tired of that. It's been a long time where we really don't know for sure what's happening and what's going to happen. And then when you add all the different things that have been going on in our society, it's like, this is rough. And so I'm glad that at least probably within about a month, we'll have a little bit better sense of what may or may not be coming, at least in society. But I don't know, I try to think of the positive things. I've enjoyed time with my animals. I've enjoyed time outside. So I try to look at those silver linings. And when I can do that, I think there's been some positive things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember at the beginning of this, I was like, okay, this is only going to last like a month. Like, oh, it looks like it's just going to be 2 months, well, maybe 3 months. And then we're like 6 months, 7 months into it. I'm like, all right, I'm ready for this to end. But we understand that sometimes life throws us a curveball that we're just not able to, we didn't expect. So all we can do is just get ready to swing for the next time, right?
Absolutely. We'll be hopeful that we've learned a lot and that we've moved through it in a good way. So
yeah, absolutely. And speaking of COVID-19, how has your work shifted during this double pandemic? And I'm referencing the term double pandemic as like COVID-19 and social unrest occurring nationally simultaneously.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think, so it's two different ways because it's, two different things going on. Certainly the safety precautions and the steps, the university's taking and all of that. So moving to virtual. I prefer being with students in the classroom and getting that face-to-face contact, of course, but the virtual world is okay. I mean, it's been an uphill battle for me to learn it all and get it down pretty quickly. But I've actually discovered that a few of the pieces, I like the breakout rooms a lot. I like the chat a lot. I like the Google Docs that you can, put and people can populate at the same time that we're doing stuff that in some ways it's actually been really helpful a couple of my classes are very experiential, where we do simulated experiences, what's going on with this family, what's going on with these children. And me being able to use chat when people are acting the role of a children's division is kind of cool. I just realized this last week. I'm actually able to interact with them and give them pointers. Whereas in the classroom, I couldn't walk up to them and whisper in their ear. It was just much more distracting. But this way, I can give them ideas without distracting nobody knows. So it's that. So I try to take it with a grain of salt. But of course, the very first way the pandemic has impacted was just having to go virtual and having to learn to deal with people in a different way, work with people in a different way. And like I said, there's actually some benefits to that for the classes, I think. Although I'd love to get back to regular classroom work. And then the second way, when you talk about the double pandemic, the second big thing, the social unrest, that's been unnerving, it's been worrisome on one hand, but it's been exciting on another. And the way that that's impacted my work, I think, is in a really good way. It's actually made my work much more meaningful because of things like your Diversity Alliance, things like the Anti-Racist Educators Group, the ODEI and all the classes they've had, the workshops and classes and the Anti-Racism Dialogue series. I'm able to help facilitate some dialogues with them. I've been fortunate to join a group of people and do that. Here at the Child Advocacy Center, we've started a change force, so these are new things that have come about to help us focus on what I think is incredibly important. So there's a lot of new and, for me, extremely welcome activities in this regard so I'm okay to add that to the work,
If there's one thing that I've realized from living in St. Louis for the past 5 years, it's within chaos, there's opportunity, right? And because of COVID-19, it is forcing all industry leaders to reimagine what does it look like to do this work? Because continuing work like as business as usual will lead to disparities and perpetuate a lot of different gaps that we're trying to address. So I thank you for highlighting different ways that you've not let this curveball hold you down. You've really figured out how to readjust, and it sounds like you're doing a great job in your class. You mentioned something about anti-racism. What is anti-racism, and why is this topic relevant in 2020?
Okay, that's a great question. It's got two big parts. So, so the first one, what is anti-racism? I understand it to be a very conscious decision to identify and address and try to make amends for racism that has occurred in our society, to absolutely recognize and say it's absolutely a fact, and this is how it's impacted people, and this is how we're going to make sure it best way possible that it's no longer going to have those impacts. So we're going to, there's multiple steps to that, making sure that there's a rich education and information and recognition, and then addressing any of the issues that it has brought about, and then moving forward in ways to cause no harm, to ameliorate it, or prevent it, and hopefully. So it's huge. I mean, it's not an easy undertaking, but it's an exciting new thing that, to try to bring it to front conscious. Now, why is it relevant now? Well, the biggest reason, the biggest thing I'm upset about is that we have active movement afoot to try to act like anything anti-racist is un-American, or not patriotic, or foolish, because we don't have systemic issues in our country. We don't have systemic racism, and it's baffling, and it's mind-blowing, and it's upsetting on so many levels. And so we have to counter that. We have to overcome this. Why is it? The main reason it's relevant, the reason it's even in the vernacular, I think, of our country right now, is because I think George Floyd and some of these other, Breonna Taylor, we've reached the tipping point. I think huge segments of our society have said enough is enough. I mean, it's clear and it's obvious. We have systemic racism, we have systemic problems, we need to address this. So that's exciting. That's like, yes, we're maybe moving toward, trying to create some real change. But one pushback on that is the current administration saying, oh no, it's not an issue. And in fact, we're going to get rid of any diversity trainings, any ODEI offices. We're going to get rid of anybody talking about this being an issue, because it's not, because we don't want to recognize it, because that's un-American. And so I think it's a very dangerous time. I think that sort of information out in the mainstream is just dangerous. It's not recognizing the history of this country, or the fact that we've had an issue from the very beginning. So I think we're really at that tipping point, and it's very exciting on one hand, but it's scary on another, that something's going to have to change. And I think soon we have to figure out as a nation what direction we're heading in, and whether or not what we're going to stand for, But,
Yeah.
So it's a big deal right now. And, and, it's like I tell students or others who, when we have these conversations, it's like, it's almost like civil rights movement all over again in a way. I think it might get worse before it gets better, which I think we're starting to see some signs of that, the pushback and the shutting down parts of companies that do have these programmings, or saying we're going to hold back money. All of that, it's getting bad and difficult. I hope we come through on the other side in a much better place.
Absolutely. And, when you're talking, I couldn't help but to really think about how important historical relevance is if we want to make an equitable society, right? Because you have an argument that, well, listen, people, if they really want it bad enough, they can obtain anything, the American dream, right? But they're not taking into account the historical policies that have led to the type of disparities that are preventing certain social identities to have the same type of access to experience upward social mobility, right? And so then you mentioned, un-American or unpatriotic, training, and how diversity trainings is kind of like going against America as a whole. Well, I think we have to realize that when we talk about being American and being a patriot, that's coded language for a certain group of people that have benefited in society based off of the historical policies and procedures that have set them apart financially, health. There's many disparities that have just separated these two groups, and so I think it's very relevant to know what anti-racism is. And I think the whole concept between do you support racist policies, or are you for anti-racist policies, and really just kind of looking at a policy could this enhance disparities, or is it going to close a gap? And it's, you really have to start looking through a critical lens if we are to try to find the right answer that's going to lead to the future that we all desire.
Right, and we have to shut down these efforts to shut down our knowledge building about diversity and about the history and about oppression. We've got to keep that alive, and keep that so that our young and our youth can learn to not make the same mistakes. We've just got to keep it alive. So I'm very distressed about the efforts to shut that down.
Yeah, so what role do you think education, particularly higher education, should be playing in countering this narrative?
Yeah, I think exactly what we're doing here at UMSL. I'm incredibly proud of the ODEI, the office here that's been established, and all of the resource and materials. I'm scared that some universities are taking steps to knock some of this off, because they fear their federal funding, because certain entities have said we're going to cut off federal funding, or we're going to, take it away from anybody who's offering any classes around white privilege, and so it's a scary time. And so I think higher education needs to try to take that stand, that we're going to do this, we're going to offer this as information, we're going to, support these efforts to tell a true history of America, so yeah, it's a battle at this point, And I'm glad and I'm proud of those universities that are engaging in the battle and saying we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. you know, as long as we can, and hopefully we can encourage people to stand with this movement and maybe take the right stand so that these changes that are afoot are not permanent.
Right. Now, and I think that professors like yourself have an incredible opportunity to like ensure students have this awareness of the world. Now, can you talk about your cultural advocacy class? Why did you create the class, and what do you hope your students get out of it?
Sure, thank you. No, I mean, I think I've been fortunate to be able to have opportunities to create classes like this and to have this background. And I think I did it because I am a person of color. And so all my life, I've learned a little bit about different populations and different groups and different ways of living and even different religions. My mother was very active in her church, but it had a global mission. She was sort of a missionary within our church. So we learned about many other different religions. And so for me, it's part of ongoing education. You know, for me, all of us have to continuously learn forever. And so I'm excited when I can be any part of offering cross-cultural or cultural diversity trainings, or, you know, helping people find opportunities to learn about others, you know, and to gain that awareness. And along the route, you often learn that people, while we have dissimilar activities or we're different in many ways, we're also actually often more similar than we are different. And so I think that's a huge education and good for us. So I think that just those opportunities to expose people to different ways of life, different ways of problem solving, but at the same time then gaining an appreciation for those different ways and recognizing their own strengths in the process, it's just been wonderful. The other thing, when you talked earlier about building, you know, the strength of allies and things, for me, cross-cultural education is also about, in fact, most of my early efforts were called building bridges. You know, it's about building bridges and creating allies. That we are much more likely to stand with others who are different from us if we know them, if we feel connected to them, if we've met them, you know, if we've in some way gotten to know them. So I just fully embrace and love cross-cultural learning for that reason.
Yeah, and I think the problem that some Americans have to seeing the benefits of cultural competency is that they've never been put in a situation to learn or build an authentic relationship with someone who doesn't have their beliefs, who doesn't look like them. And you don't know what you know until you know it, right? So how are we supposed to tell these people that there's a veil over their eyes that are preventing them from seeing the world for how beautiful it actually is? And then when you think about different types of barriers that allowed, you know, elite access to higher education for certain groups versus others, well, when you're in the job market, who is an employer going to hire first? Someone with an Ivy League degree or someone who came from like a state institution? So I think there's a lot of systemic barriers that are preventing the right people from getting into the right position to really try to make some type of a change. So I appreciate you really kind of like highlighting the importance of cultural competency. And, you know, I think it's important for us as educators and as professionals to make them connections, you know. Can you talk about your service learning? What is your connection to Indigenous people, and what is the unique benefits your students receive from participating in your service learning?
Yes, so I'm Indigenous myself. I'm a member of the United Houma Nation, which is Southeast Louisiana. And I think a lot of what we've been even talking about probably comes through my mother, who was the first from our nation to get a high school degree and then a college degree and then a graduate degree. And so for myself, it was never a question that I was absolutely going into academia. I was gonna get at least one degree, if not multiples, like she did as the first person from our nation. I mean, she grew up also in the Deep South in Southeast Louisiana in the 40s and 50s. So suffered straight up some of the systemic discrimination, and didn't even have schools. I mean, they had the white schools and the black schools, and the Indian kids weren't allowed to go to either one. So we actually had a missionary who came into our community and taught kids in her house. My mother had to go to Atlanta, Georgia. She had to get on a train, leave her community, as a young Indian girl and go to Atlanta, Georgia, to a school for wayward girls to be able to get her high school degree. So she went through a lot. I learned a lot, and it burns inside of me a big desire to give back, to help others understand, like you said, the inequities and the different paths people have had to take just to get an education, just to get opportunities. You know, certainly our country's come a long way with desegregation and other pieces that now allow, that would be a little different had my mother grown up in more current times. But we still have huge barriers for full access. So those are some of my connections to Indigenous people and my commitment there. For my students, I mean, that giving them that service learning opportunity, the chance to spend some time immersed in my culture is it's a gift, a two-way gift. I mean, we only go into the communities and work with the communities in ways they want us or invite us. And actually my nation is only state recognized. We never signed a treaty. We don't have a reservation. So we live among the Gulf and do fishing and other things for survival. But I've got a very close, strong relationship with a very strong reservation in South Dakota, where that is open to outsiders and even has housing for outside people who want to come and volunteer, but they make it very clear up front. And I love this about the Cheyenne River Reservation, is they're very clear about come if you're welcome, and if you're coming with the right attitude and approach, you know, come to walk alongside us and we'll make some change. But if you come to help us or come at us, you know, to give us something, just turn around and go away. So I love the Cheyenne River Sioux Nation, and they've been very good. They've been very open to us. They've given us some guidance and some ideas and things they want to work with us on. So we always, when we go, when I've taken service learning groups, we have a mission that they have given us. You know, they've asked us or requested certain type of help or certain type of support for a week. We go out for that week. We spend a time right there in their housing and with them at the teen center and doing things with youth. Usually my focus has been children and youth and families. And so we've been very blessed to build real bridges with that nation. The second part of your question is asking for unique benefits for the students. I think, again, my intention is to create allies and to create connections. And the students have just, I think a lot of them come away saying it was life-changing. Minimally, and many of them say it's life-affirming. And I mean, I'll never forget, this would have been about 8 years ago before I came here at this university. Previously you described I was at Lindenwood, and I took a number of service learning groups there as well. And during that time, I had a student who, an LGBT student who actually came out during the trip, and he said it was because he never felt so accepted, so welcome, so empowered to be who he was, other than being in the community. I mean, he asked, we visited the tribal college there, and he asked of the people who were teaching cultural classes and he said, you know, what is the opinion here about LGBT community? And they're like, it's great. You know, we recognize people who are two-spirited, who walk in two different worlds, and they bring a certain strength because they can see both sides. And so he was just so thrilled. He's like, this is the first time I've been looked at as a strength, as somebody who can bring something to the table rather than frowned upon or negative, you know. And so it's things like that the students get to when experiencing another culture that closely and that clearly, they actually get to turn that mirror around and also look at themselves and get more in tune with who they are and what they're bringing. And then that immersion and that opportunity to share in such a close way, you just get closer with yourself, you get closer with others. And we have many of the students, particularly since I've been taking the groups from here, who are still connected. They are so well connected because it's a collectivistic society. When you're there, you're welcomed and treated almost like family. And I have students who are telling me different things that are going on with the nation that I, you know, because I don't stay on Facebook a lot, or I don't stay, and so they stay very well connected. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. They're closer members of the family than I am, you know, and I love that. But I just think the benefits are really, really huge. It's been very important. And like I said, the way we go, where they tell us what they need or want while we're there, we know we're of service to them at the same time that we're taking away so much that is serving us. So it's definitely a win-win situation.
And I think it is so important what you said about not coming to the nation with a plan of here's how I'm going to fix you,
Right.
here's how I'm going to help you, because in a lot of higher institutions, when you do service learning, when you do civic engagement, particularly if it's like an elite institution, they like to ride in on like a white horse and try to save them, and that's why you have these underrepresented communities that have a bad taste in their mouth about higher institutions as a whole. So what is some so because of your inclusive practices of how you approach serving these nations, what is some feedback that you get from the nation themselves?
They're thrilled. They want us back. You know, they've actually allowed us to give ideas. I mean, I'll give you the best example of this. Lately, for the last 3 years, the main service we've been providing is helping them to launch an incredible event they have at Cheyenne River called Red Can. And it's a festival, but it's a spray painting festival. But they have dedicated, have found buildings in the community and such where they get spray paint artists from throughout the world. They literally have some from a couple other countries sometimes who will come and spray paint in their community for that week. But they'll do meaningful things. You know, they'll ask people for ideas, or they'll talk to, or like if it's the laundromat that's letting them use the side of their building to paint, they'll have a meeting with them and what is it you would like to, and they try to come up with things and themes that are important to the community. So they'll often put something, either native words or native symbols that have significant meaning. And so the community is like, this is great. We can take now pride in our community. This is beautiful murals we have now painted throughout our community. So we were there just helping and supporting and feeding and, trying to run some children's activities a little bit, but our main purpose for years has been helping the children's activities. And what we noticed was during Red Can, a lot of that was shut down because the focus was on the festival and the artists and what's going up in the community and feeding these people. So we asked a few years ago, we said, well, can we still do things for their kids? Because we see them coming around and asking us what's up. Is it okay? Would it be supportive for you if you let us, if we offered something and if we talked about ideas and what we could do? And so we brainstormed for months and we built while we were getting there, we told them some ideas, and they wanted us to do it out in community. So instead of just at the teen center, we took these kids' activities and did them like at the Dairy Queen or out at the, we went to the school and recruited kids, and then we went to like an open field and we're doing another kids' activity. So we were actually engaging also big time in the community. And they came back to us afterwards and said, this was our best Red Can ever. And it was like their 8th or 9th. And they said, because we were actually doing our children's stuff in the community too, that we were still, that part of us that means so much was alive at the same time Red Can was alive, and you guys helped make that happen. And so that just, I think when you develop that bond and that long-term, relationship, and you come at it that way, that, this is an idea we have, but only if it works for you, and we work together on it for so long. It was beautiful. And so the feedback has been really strong.
And I think when UMSL says we transform lives, there's talking about that. That is what they're referencing. You're transforming not only the lives of the students that are going with you, the lives of the small children in that nation. So kudos there. And my question to you is, so we live in an individualistic society, right? I don't think a lot of people understand how that has prevented us or separated us as people. And then when you hear of collectivist communities like you were talking about, it kind of puts it into perspective that our normal isn't the only normal. So how do you suggest, or how do you think in a time of COVID where we're having to reimagine how we do things, how can we bring that transformative experience to people in St. Louis who can't have that type of transformative experience like your students?
I don't know. That's really tough. I mean, that's a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge. I would just encourage people to explore even what's online. There are, Red Can Festival was virtual this year. We couldn't go there live. I mean, the reservation's been closed for a long time, but they did it virtual. And a few of us, you know, would go online and engage as best as we could. We could still hear the drum and the ceremonies that opened it every day. We could still, so it was different, but yet it was still special, you know? So I would encourage people to take this time and do some of that exploring, you know, do go out and Google or get out on YouTube and engage with other communities, even in a limited way, even in listening to a drum, even in viewing a ceremony, you know, even though we can't be there together in person, maybe we can have a little bit of the experience that we don't regularly allow ourselves, you know? So you can still learn, you can, but there are groups. We do a lot of circle work in Native communities and Indigenous communities, and there's an open group, it's online, and it's I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's called Healing Circles. It's not Indigenous, but they do have some Indigenous people who work with it. But they have open healing circles on Google that you can go and join, and you know, they have regular like 5 or 6 sessions. So it's called healingcircles.org or something like that, and you would see, I think the last one is launching maybe November 2nd or something, the last one for this fall. But they're pulling people together. It is based out of California, the Pacific Coast, so it's based at that time zone. So I think it's mostly just nighttime classes for us. But if you can imagine 6 nights for 6 weeks, you could join with other people from throughout, you know, the America, and I'm not sure they're only focused in America, but you know, who want to talk about what we're going through and what we're all experiencing and how to survive this together. So to me, joining opportunities like that would be a great cross-cultural and multicultural experience, you know. And so that's one I've considered recently, just to do something, you know.
Yeah.
So we have to be a little more creative, but I think going ahead and allowing ourselves to do that and engage with people wherever they are, however they're reaching out, and allowing ourselves to absorb some of that and be part of that.
Absolutely. And I see the role of like the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is to provide these types of opportunities for people to gain that cultural competency so that they can see that the world is so much bigger than what we see in our head, you know? So the last question, I want to end on a positive note. What are you most hopeful for in the future? You've listed a number of things today that makes me hopeful for the future. What are you hopeful for?
Oh, well, thank you for that. No, I didn't even get to say this. This has been a big joy. We just found out Tuesday, so a few days ago, that we have been funded. We're going to have we were funded with the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So UMSL is going to share in this grant with the University of Alaska Fairbanks to bring our Child Advocacy Studies classes to them for online classes. Thank you. So to help victim services. So I'm very hopeful for that, very excited for that. I'm hopeful that some of our UMSL students, there's a small foundation offering support as well, not huge, but I think it was $1,000 or $2,000 that we're going to make available to UMSL students, you know, only a few each summer, but who can go if they want to go do internship there. Because under this grant, they're going to be setting up internships for victim services, for advocacy people in Alaska. That's where the greatest need is, you know, right now under this grant that we applied for. And so if some of our students want to go have that experience, we've got a foundation that will support UMSL students, at least get them over there, you know. So we're very excited. I'm very hopeful and excited about that. I am hopeful that all the young adults I meet and all the youth, that most of the people that I encounter in classes and things here, and ODEI has been a big part of this, bringing people who want to open their minds and be more culturally competent and stuff. It's been very exciting. I'm very hopeful that these younger, we need to pass the torch. We need the young generation to come in and lead us in the right direction. I'm very, very hopeful because I sense and I feel a much better understanding of diversity, a much better openness to difference, a much better acceptance and tolerance for others. I sense that in the younger generation. I think it's very real and genuine. And so I'm ready to just say, here, please take the lead, get our country going in a better direction and in a good direction. And what I'm most hopeful for, like I said, we might have to hit the wall a little bit first. We may have to go through some more negative stuff first, but I am hopeful that the United States will once again be united.
Mm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that our audience tuned in because this was a great conversation. We also wanted to thank the audience. Make sure that you follow us on our blog, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our newly created YouTube page where you will see this conversation host. Stay tuned for our next conversation in November. And Dana, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Bye.